New normal big life.
Is fibromyalgia just a catch-all diagnosis, or is there more to it? Today on New Normal Big Life, Dr. Bruce Gillis, a Harvard-trained physician and immunology pioneer with more than 40 years of experience, joins us to unravel the mysteries of fibromyalgia.
What we have also realized that besides fibromyalgia and long COVID and interstitial cystitis having a relationship to this immune deficiency pattern, we're also seeing patients with chronic fatigue, often testing positive, and patients with irritable bowel syndrome telling us that when they're on Imbix, their symptoms also lessen and or disappear.
From debunking the myths about this misunderstood condition to exploring its causes, diagnosis, challenges, and innovative ways to manage symptoms, Dr. Gillis shares cutting-edge insights into fibromyalgia diagnosis and treatments. So listen to gain clarity on fibromyalgia and discover hope for getting your life back. Hi, friends. Welcome to the New Normal Big Life podcast. We bring you natural news and stories about nature that we hope will inspire you to get outside and adventure, along with a step-by-step plan to help you practice what you've learned and create your own new normal, live the biggest life you can dream. I'm your host, Antoinette Lee, the Wellness Warrior. A pioneer in the field of immunology and fibromyalgia research, Dr. Bruce S. Gillis is a Harvard-trained physician and medical researcher with over 4 decades of clinical and scientific experience, including operating his own medical practice. He holds an MD from the University of Illinois and an MPH in epidemiology and occupational medicine from the Harvard School of Public Health. Dr. Gillis has served as professor at both UCLA and the University of Illinois College of Medicine, and he's held leadership roles at groundbreaking institutions including epigenetics and most recently the Center for Immunology Science. His work has been at the forefront of identifying the biological underpinnings of fibromyalgia, challenging long-standing misconceptions, and leading efforts to develop diagnostic and treatment protocols that focus on immune system deficiencies. He's collaborated with major facilities like Stanford, Johns Hopkins, and the University of Virginia. As a clinician, physician, and scientist, Dr. Gillis has dedicated his career to bringing clarity and compassion to often misunderstood conditions. Dr. Gillis, welcome to New Normal Big Life.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and your audience. This is a very important opportunity because in the subject we will be addressing this today, fibromyalgia, there are more myths that are being bandied about than the reference to the facts that peer-reviewed science has identified.
I'm excited to talk about this because 4 million Americans, 216 million globally, are diagnosed with fibromyalgia. What is fibromyalgia? What causes it? And why is it more prevalent in women?
First of all, there are about 20 million Americans with fibromyalgia. It affects 6% of the population. It is not a gender-specific disease. Fibromyalgia, unfortunately, was bandied about, and still far too many healthcare professionals still believe this, as a bogus affliction of neurotic, hypochondriacal, hysterical women. It's been called not a disease, but a syndrome. And in a syndrome, it's nothing more than a collection of subjective complaints. In reality, we have unequivocal, peer-reviewed, published research that proves what fibromyalgia is, why it happens, and how it can be managed. Fibromyalgia, based upon research that we originally published in 2012, I and colleagues at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, Department of Pathology, were able to prove that patients with fibromyalgia suffer with a abnormality in a certain type of white blood cell. This white blood cell is called the peripheral blood mononuclear cell. And these cells have a critical responsibility to produce very important proteins in the body. And people with fibromyalgia have defective peripheral blood mononuclear cells, and as a result, those cells cannot manufacture normal quantities of these important proteins. Over research, we have found that people who have our blood test, which is now called the Fibro test, and you can learn about it by going to www.thefibrotest, and you have to use the because there's another fibro test out there that talks about liver disease, and that's not us. 100% of those people who have the test and they're positive, we have proven have unique DNA genomic signatures. In other words, if you truly have fibromyalgia, you have specific DNA that no one else has. Healthy people don't have it. We published these results in one of the world's most important medical journals called Nature Scientific Reports. There are 30,000 medical journals in the world. Nature Scientific Reports ranks, we believe, number 5 in the world. So obviously we had to reach very, very high standards and had to have multiple individuals review these results and say, yes, they are accurate. So, number one, it is a real disease, unless, of course, you don't believe in DNA, right? And we use DNA to convict murderers and rapists. Why shouldn't we accept DNA for fibromyalgia? As a result, there is no basis for a doctor or any person that you encounter in your life to say that fibromyalgia isn't a real disease. Fibromyalgia is unequivocally a very real disease.
So anyone who has currently been diagnosed with fibromyalgia and they want to ensure that this diagnosis is really what's happening in their body, can they request a fibro test?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as it turns out, it's covered by Medicare and most insurance companies. So for most people, it costs zero to get the test. A diagnosis without the test is not accurate, okay? You need to get the test, and you need to know that you have proof of these abnormalities. That's number one. Number two, I can also tell you that with colleagues at the University of Illinois College of Pharmacy, I was able to identify a compound that causes those defective white blood cells to increase the production of those proteins. And when that happens, their symptoms either lessen or they vanish. That compound is called Imbix, IMBXX, and you can learn about it by going to imbxx.com. It is a totally natural compound. As it turns out, I was able to develop it based upon anti-cancer chemotherapy research that was done about 20 to 30 years ago. And we were able to identify a family of bacteria that are found in soil and water that, when acting with those defective white blood cells, cause those white blood cells to increase the production of those proteins. And when you go to the website of Imbix, I recommend that you watch the videos and read the remarks of people who are on it. It's will change your whole perspective about fibromyalgia and the potential to get better.
Will Imbix be covered by insurance, or is this something a patient would have to buy out of pocket?
They would have to buy, but it meets the definition of, if you have a federal savings plan, you can take it out of that savings plan, that medical savings plan, and it's covered. And it costs, at this moment, it costs less than $3 a day. So for less than half the cost of going to Starbucks, you can feel better. It works by targeting systems in the body which can be adversely affected by some of the drugs and other compounds people use for fibromyalgia. Everything that the FDA has approved for fibromyalgia does nothing to impact your DNA or the peripheral blood mononuclear cells or the protein deficiencies. They work to mask your symptoms. One compound is in the family of gabapentinoids that is an anti-seizure medicine. Nobody with fibromyalgia suffers with seizures, okay? And that compound was recently identified to cause heart damage. So I would recommend that patients discuss this. Additionally, on the websites, you can have access to all of the peer-reviewed published studies that we have done. And my collaborations have been with the University of Illinois and the Mayo Clinic and the Stanford Medical Center. Not exactly second-rate places, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, is there not a neurological component to fibromyalgia at all, or was that just kind of attached to the findings in fibromyalgia previously so that it could be treated in air quotes with a pharmaceutical like gabapentin?
So, as it turns out, it seemed to me like there was a fight among rheumatologists, neurologists, and psychiatrists as to who were the specialists for fibromyalgia. And this is not a rheumatologic disease. It is not a neurologic disease. It is not a psychiatric disease. When we published our results in 2012, we won a major national award for outstanding research in clinical immunology. That's number one. We still got criticism. We got criticism from physicians who were receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars per year from a major drug company who was manufacturing a compound for fibromyalgia because they saw us, I think they saw us, and I'm not going to put words in anybody, they saw us as finding a pathway that their compound would not have a positive effect on. So they're selling a multi-billion-dollar a year compound or compounds, and I think they were trying to protect those sales. In fact, one of the doctors who criticized us called me and said, "How dare you propose this?" Okay, and I said, "Well, what part of our research article did you find that you had difficulty understanding or agreeing with?" And he said, and I'm honest with this, he said to me, "I never read your article." Okay?
That's shocking.
Yes, and if you went to ProPublica, you'd find that year alone he made over $200,000, I believe, from this drug company. Okay.
So, Dr. Gillis, you hit on a point that a lot of patients are saying now over the past 5 years. How can they trust the healthcare industry? How can they trust their doctors to be objective? How can they trust the drugs that they're taking? Any advice?
So let me tell you, I have been attacked and criticized, all right, about our science. This test has been available now for 12 years. And in 12 years, not one doctor, not one scientist, not one laboratory has ever been able to identify a fault or inaccuracy in our blood tests. No one has been able to prove it. Trust me, if they could do it, they would have said it. So instead of attacking the message, they've attacked me, the messenger. That's number one, okay? Number two, whatever I say, whether it's in person or on a webcast or on the internet, I base it upon peer-reviewed publications, all right? And as a result, I will stake my reputation on that. If I say something that wasn't peer-reviewed or published, then I'm at fault. But to my knowledge, I've never done that, okay? So that's number one. Number two, I have made it a point to respond to emails and phone calls from fibromyalgia patients and from doctors treating fibromyalgia patients. And I have done that at zero cost, okay? I've never charged a patient for me to do that. And usually those calls average 30 to 45 minutes at a time. You know, what other doctors are working for free for that kind of time?
None that I know of.
So I feel there's an obligation on my part. Another issue that you brought up is it is not female-centric. It's only thought to be because women tend to complain more of these symptoms. But I can tell you that we see this disease in children and we see it in men, all right? So it affects everyone. And something that I recently published is the following. And this is why I have a suspicion as to how fibromyalgia may be triggered. We did research on patients with long COVID. If you go to do a literature search, and the best place is called the National Library of Medicine, and you put in fibromyalgia and COVID or long COVID, you will find numerous articles where patients with long COVID, the vast majority, if not all, have symptoms that are identical to fibromyalgia. So as a result, we did a small study of patients with long COVID through the University of Illinois College of Medicine, and we tested them to see if they have the same markers as patients with fibromyalgia. 86% did. So that tells me that fibromyalgia may be triggered by a coronavirus. COVID is a coronavirus. There are 7 human coronaviruses. They are the most common cause of the common cold. And so I have a suspicion, not able yet to prove it, but I have a suspicion that you get a cold from a coronavirus and it causes your DNA to change. That process is called epigenetics because your DNA is always changing. I'll give you an analogy. As a child or as a teenager, you go out in the sun, you want to get a great suntan, and you get a sunburn. And then 20, 30, 40 years later, you get skin cancer. Why is it? The UV rays of the sun are causing cancer because they trigger a change in the DNA of the skin cells, and that's how it happens. That's called epigenetics. So much of the DNA that you have today, should you be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or whatever, is a little different than what it was when you were growing up as a youth. So that's my suspicion, and that's why I believe there is so much fibromyalgia. And as it turns out, the connection we see with long COVID is not the only connection we've done. In research we are about to publish that we did with the Stanford Medical Center and a urology group out of Virginia, there is a disease, again thought primarily only in women, called interstitial cystitis or painful bladder syndrome. That affects about 10 to 12 million Americans. And we are seeing that nearly 7 out of 10 of those also have the same positive markers of fibromyalgia.
Just for the listeners out there who may not have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but are concerned that they could have it, what are the symptoms of fibromyalgia?
Okay, the primary symptoms are brain fog, fatigue, lack of energy, poor sleep, headaches, mental depression, chronic anxiety. They can have the manifestations of the painful bladder syndrome, where they have to urinate very often and have a lot of pelvic area pain. These are people who quickly become disabled because they have such terrible symptoms. And one of the worst parts of this disease is the level of suicidal ideation and suicide. Nearly 30% of people with fibromyalgia contemplate suicide or commit suicide. And why is that? I'll tell you. The patient looks perfectly healthy. They go to the doctor, and the doctor throws up his or her hand, says, I don't know what it is. I'm going to put this label of fibromyalgia on you. I can't explain why you have it or how it works, but you've got it. So number one, you're labeled with a disease with no expertise being attached to it. That's number one. Number two, you say to the doctor, okay, what can you do for me about it? And the doctor says, well, I can give you these masking compounds, which are highly addicting, like the gabapentinoids you spoke about, or we can give you narcotics and opiates. But the symptoms persist, and those compounds, those drugs, do nothing about the brain fog. They may mask the pain. They do nothing usually for the sleep or the depression or the anxiety. And so you're now saying, look, the doctor can't confirm what's wrong with me. The doctor can't cure me. And number three, my friends and family look at me like it's all in my head. So why wouldn't you get depressed? Why wouldn't you commit suicide? Because you say, there's nothing that I can do that's going to make me better, that's going to help me, that's going to turn my life around. We, on the other hand, have done the research to tell you, this is what we've been able to prove, okay? This is what we've been able to show. This is what we can offer you in an effort to address the symptoms. Because, as I said, we can't change your DNA. So we do not have a compound that can cure you, okay? We do not have a compound that diagnoses you, but we have a blood test that can diagnose you, all right? So those things do exist. All you have to be willing to do is to say, I'm willing to try, all right? I'm willing to discuss this. And as I just said, if I had something to hide, I wouldn't make myself available to any fibromyalgia patient's doctor. One of the criticisms we also got, just to let you know, was, well, you developed it only in one laboratory, the University of Illinois College of Medicine, Department of Pathology. Not exactly a second-rate facility, but in 2013, we had one of the world's most important rheumatologists, Professor Daniel Wallace of UCLA, do an analysis of our test. And he did it through UCLA's and a separate laboratory. And we proved that the markers, the biomarkers that we identified for fibromyalgia don't occur in other rheumatic diseases. And we compared it to rheumatoid arthritis and systemic lupus erythematosus. So we proved the accuracy of the test by an independent researcher and an independent or separate laboratory. So we've met all the criticism that we've received, but it doesn't mean that the criticism has stopped, okay? Because I think, and maybe I'm wrong, I think that it's because of financial factors.
After this short break, we'll be back with more jaw-dropping insights from Dr. Gillis. Before we cover the next topic in this episode, I want to introduce you to the adventure sports lifestyle with what I call a micro story about an adventure that I've had. The adventure sports lifestyle and my deep connection to nature is essential to my good health. So here's the story. If you've been listening to the last few episodes of the podcast, you've heard me talk about preparedness for social unrest, lockdowns, natural disasters, wildfires, all of the unknown things that may hit you suddenly and with very little warning. So it's important to get prepared now. We're recommending 14 days, 2 weeks. Although FEMA recommends 10 days, I suggest 14. That's what I do with my family. You want to have 14 days of food, water, medical supplies, and first aid, and a plan for where you're going to go if you can't stay at home. One of the things that my family and I do is water sports. So we have a lot of personal flotation devices, or PFDs, life jackets. Those names are used interchangeably. And because there have been many 100-year floods throughout the country, we're preparing more than usual. So what we've done is taken our personal flotation devices out of the garage and put them in the main house so that if there's an emergency and we're waking up in the middle of the night or just don't have a lot of time to prepare, we can grab our personal flotation devices and make sure that we can be floaty no matter the conditions. Even though we know how to swim and our dog knows how to swim, having a personal flotation device can be a lifesaver, especially if you have to tread water or swim for a very long time. A personal flotation device can't necessarily save your life, but it can keep you floating until you can save yourself or be rescued. So I hope this inspires you to get outside and adventure alone, with friends, or with people you love most. But most of all, I hope it inspires you to start acting on and preparing for disaster preparedness.
World events are constantly teaching everyone some very painful lessons. Without warning, everything we take for granted can suddenly fail. And if you're not prepared in advance, you really don't have a chance. The fact is, the modern world runs on a just-in-time supply schedule. Even the biggest grocery stores can carry only enough food for a few days' worth of normal shopping. So when disaster strikes and chaos ensues at your local stores, the odds are simply against you. If you don't have emergency food and gear stockpiled in advance, you will probably suffer. My partner, Ready Hour, is here to help you ahead of time. Ready Hour has a long history of providing calorie-rich, reliable, and delicious nourishment for life's unexpected situations, and critical emergency gear too. They're part of a family of companies that have served millions of people like you for decades. My family and I use Ready Hour products for camping, mountaineering, and disaster preparedness for 5 years now. They're not just reliable, they're also your affordable option too. Long-term survival food shouldn't break the bank. That's why they have great sales and payment options for you. It's your bridge to safety and survival when things just aren't normal anymore. So make your next decision your smartest decision. Be ready for tomorrow, today. Trust Ready Hour. Ready to shop? Use my affiliate link in the show description.
What we have also realized that besides fibromyalgia and long COVID and interstitial cystitis having a relationship to this immune deficiency pattern, we're also seeing patients with chronic fatigue often testing positive, and patients with irritable bowel syndrome telling us that when they're on Imbix, their symptoms also lessen and or disappear. All of this tells me that the body's immune system plays a vital role in a number of chronic illnesses. And so I invite people with those other kinds of conditions to consider getting tested. And if they have any questions or their doctors have any questions, again, as I've told you, they can contact me personally. Their doctor can contact me personally. There's zero cost to doing so.
Thank you so much. And if you don't have an insurance plan that will cover the tests and Imbix, there is a payment plan that you can use you can pay over 18 months.
It's zero interest.
There you have it. So take advantage of this if you've been diagnosed with any of these conditions, or you have unexplained health challenges and you want to know if it's fibromyalgia, get the test.
Something you should also know, physicians often tell patients, well, we're going to do lots of tests to find out what's wrong with you. Those are called rule-out tests. So we're going to rule out that you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, that you don't have lupus. Our test is a rule-in test. It rules in, do you have the disease? Rule-out tests doctors can often do in their own offices. Our test, based upon FDA requirements, can only be done through our laboratory, okay? I'm saying that not to make money, but because that's the FDA rules. Our test is called an LDT, Laboratory Developed Test, and as a result, it can only be done in the laboratory where it's been developed. So there's no financial incentive for a doctor to offer our test because A, they can't bill for it, and by FDA rules, we can't even pay them to draw the blood. So you have that. And also, if you have the definitive diagnosis of fibromyalgia based upon the test, you don't have to keep going back to the doctor every 4 to 6 weeks. You now know what's wrong with you, right? So again, there's another financial disincentive. And I'm not saying that doctors do this on purpose, but I'm just talking about, you raised the issue about the business of medicine. I just talked to you about the business of medicine. Okay?
That makes perfect sense. As you were speaking about the symptoms of fibromyalgia, as a veteran, one of the thoughts that crossed my mind is those are also a lot of symptoms of post-traumatic stress. I know that it's often called post-traumatic stress disorder, but a lot of veterans don't like being labeled with a disorder. So what are your thoughts about that? Because when you mentioned the suicide rate around, or suicide ideation around fibromyalgia, it made me think about the suicide rate among veterans, about the chronic pain, anxiety, depression, lack of sleep. And I wonder if there's any correlation and if you've done any research with a veteran population.
No, unfortunately, I have not done that. I'd be happy to do it. Now, many veterans have, as I understand, TRICARE. TRICARE pays for our test. So if TRICARE pays for our test, that veteran, if they have it, there's no out-of-pocket expense, is there? We'll take the TRICARE payment and you have the answer. I should also let you know that if you get the test and it's positive, we will provide you with a 30-day supply of Imbix to try.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
So in other words, we believe that we may have something that can lessen your symptoms, okay? And because our compound boosts immune system health. That's all it does. It boosts immune system health. We are not here to cure anybody, okay? We don't call it a treatment for fibromyalgia because, as I just said, I can't treat the DNA basis of this, right? But we're willing, there's a saying, put your money where your mouth is. Well, we're doing that, okay? I should also let you know, and this is very important, we have had people who have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia with our blood test, have taken Imbix, and have then contacted us and said, we would like to be retested. And in so far, to my knowledge, everybody who's been on Imbix, who had a positive test score, when they are retested, their score goes down, and in some people, the test becomes negative. It's no longer positive. So that's the benefits of what we can do, okay? And through this all, we have followed FDA requirements and rules, both about the test and about Imbix.
Dr. Gillis, this has been an eye-opening discussion to make your services a little easier for veterans to access. For those that don't have TRICARE, there is something called care in the community or community care, and not every VA facility operates identically. So at some VAs, you do have the option, well, at all VAs, you have the option of getting care in the community under certain circumstances. You have to wait 30 days or more for an appointment with a VA care provider, or there's no specialist in your area. There are a number of conditions. However, if you were to become a community care provider within the VA system, then the VA could pay for both the test and Imbix for the veteran patient. So that's just something to consider to make it easier for veterans to access your service. And you could essentially have an appointment with a veteran using Zoom or some other kind of, I think you might have to have a more secure system, but there are, I can't think of the word right now, telehealth. Right. You can become a telehealth provider for the VA, and they can see you under community care.
If that's something you think I could accomplish, I promise you that I will look into it as soon as possible.
I hope that you will pursue it. I think this might be provide a lot of answers for some veterans and others who are suffering with chronic pain and other related symptoms that you've mentioned. Fibromyalgia could be the cause. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you want listeners to know?
I want them to realize that this is a diagnosis. It's a diagnosis we can achieve accurately, and there's something that we can do about this. There is no reason to lose hope. There is no reason to think that you have been abandoned by health care providers. The information is out there that if you have any questions, you can contact us directly. As I said, even though I'm the messenger and I've been attacked as being the messenger, no one to date has ever refuted any of our peer-reviewed publications. No one has ever found fault in our peer-reviewed publications. And if you believe in DNA, you know the basis of our science. So as I said earlier, if DNA can be used against criminals, why can't it be used to tell you why you are sick, how you got sick, and what can be done about your illness? Pure and simple.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gillis. Listeners, I will put all of the links and all the reference Dr. Gillis gave us in the show description. Please check it out and talk with your healthcare provider.
Thank you so very much. Have a very good day today. And thank you for letting me talk to these individuals.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
Since 2012, the Health Ranger store has been answering your calls for a trustworthy, responsive, and affordable source of health-focused products. Built from scratch with its own US-based fulfillment center and dedicated in-house customer support, they've got you covered. From nutritional supplements and superfoods to storable foods and preparedness gear, they offer competitive prices on top quality, lab-tested items. I'm excited to partner with the Health Ranger store to bring you the purest, most reliable products out there. Ready to shop? Use my affiliate link to get started.